Hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. It is the sound of your death.
In the history of politically disastrous pronouncements, perhaps nothing exceeds Texas politician Clayton Williams's ill-considered joke that if a woman is going to be raped, she might as well just relax and enjoy it. Yet something akin to this passes for political philosophy for the leadership of the European Union. How else can we explain the declaration by Dimitris Avramopoulos, European High Commissioner for Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship, that there is nothing the European Union can do to stop mass migration? In a column for Politico, Mr. Avramopoulos writes, "It's time to face the truth. We cannot and will never be able to stop migration." The truth, however, is quite different. Harsh language alone can discourage migration. As Peter Brimelow noted in the Daily Caller, even before building a wall or doing much of anything, President Trump's views on immigration encouraged illegal aliens to leave. Illegal immigration has recently increased, but only because new amnesty is being broached by the Republican leadership. As for fences, the real complaint of the European leadership seems not to be that fences don't work, but that they do. The Hungarian government's swiftly constructed border wall cut the number of illegal immigrants entering Hungary by over 90%. Israel's border wall has met with similar success, as even hostile media outlets have had to admit. When Mr. Avramopoulos writes about the mistaken belief that solidarity in financial terms will keep migrants on the south side of the Mediterranean, he is probably talking about the idea that if we can put the third world on the road to riches, third worlders will stay at home. He is right to think that that's a pipe dream, but only race realists know why. Mr. Avramopoulos recognizes only two other possibilities: some kind of border control or none at all. But Africans and Middle Easterners will fight any kind of control. And what is the EU Commissioner's solution? Somehow eliminate the recent discourse on migration, influenced by rising nationalism, populism and xenophobia, which has limited our opportunities to put in place smart, forward-looking migration policies at both the national and European levels. So what are these smart policies? Evacuating migrants from Libya through resettlement or assisted voluntary return? A comprehensive and fair asylum reform, or more legal channels for economic migration, especially for skilled workers, as he likes to suggest? This last recommendation is simply nonsense. Skilled workers are already fleeing nations like Germany because of the effects of mass migration, and the migrants replacing them are not just unskilled, but absolutely unemployable. Beyond that, though Mr. Avramopoulos talks about the need for a comprehensive plan, he doesn't have concrete suggestions. His only real message is that there is no possibility of actually solving this problem. He stated that we all need to be ready to accept migration, mobility, and diversity as the new norm and tailor our policies accordingly. But why do we need to do any of these things? The problem started because of the incompetence, pathological altruism, and globalist foreign policies of the European Union itself. Moreover, it's not that the European nations cannot prevent mass migration. It's that the European Union will not let them. Multiple times, the European Commission, of which Mr. Avramopoulos is a member, voted to sanction Poland or Hungary because of nationalist-guided policies, while Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán noted that the true intention of the EU is to punish countries opposed to mass immigration. The inability of European nations to assimilate their already sizable non-white populations should have led to caution about inviting more. The continent will now be saddled with a host of permanent problems created by importing a permanent underclass. That is why Mr. Avramopoulos is right to conclude that migration is deeply intertwined with our policies on economics, trade, education, and employment, to name just a few. But if the future is to consist of dumping an unlimited number of poor, uneducated, and culturally alien migrants on Europe, it will become nearly impossible to have any policies on education, healthcare, infrastructure, or the environment. Europe is doing the equivalent of developing a more effective bucket to bail water out of a boat, while doing nothing to stop the leak. The supreme function of statesmanship, said Enoch Powell, is to provide against preventable evils. Mr. Avramopoulos tells us that mass migration is not preventable, but if preventing the movement of huge masses of strangers onto European soil is something beyond the capability of the United Governments of Europe, what is the European Union anyway? Certainly preventing migrants from entering Europe is a more attainable goal than assimilating tens of millions of Africans, ensuring that third world immigrants make as much money as native Europeans, or preventing terrorist attacks. But then preventing terrorist attacks seems to be something European governments can no longer do. As British Mayor of London Sadiq Khan explained, the threat of terrorism is simply part and parcel of living in a big city. The oldest trick of a managerial elite is to create a non-existent problem, make it a permanent condition, and use it to justify the existence of a class of professionals whose job it is to manage the problem. Decades from now, assuming migrants aren't swiftly removed, we'll be reading sob stories about how Africans are having a hard time competing in the German economy. The only people who will profit will be the class that created the problem in the first place, and Mr. Avramopoulos is a member of that class. He is a kind of parody of European leadership. He boasts an array of awards and decorations from various governments, and is a knight, a grand commander, or a holder of a grand cross, in the various orders of chivalry with which emasculated national governments amuse themselves. Yet he has won no victories in defense of his homeland, and indeed has done far more to destroy it than any Greek since Pericles. Imagining this ludicrous creature festooned with his cheap ribbons lecturing Europeans on how mass migration will be good for them is reminiscent of Brezhnev dressed in his Hero of the Soviet Union and Order of Lenin medals, telling everyone that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan would be a great success. Mr. Avramopoulos is not managing an unavoidable process. He is promoting an invasion and working to thwart those who are trying to stop it. And just like Afghanistan, Europe will become a graveyard for generations to come.